Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire. Recently I've been playing a whole lot of Elder Scrolls, Betrayal of the Second Era from Chip Theory Games. Before we launch into a whole video of me talking about Elder Scrolls, in fact several in the coming month, you should know I did edit the rulebook, so I've been into this game for a long time, and I do have a financial and personal connection to its development. But all the same, what I thought would be really fun to do for this video is talk about the differences between Elder Scrolls and Too Many Bones. So as y'all may know, I absolutely love Too Many Bones. I did the Gearloc Guides for Chip Theory's channel. So it's a game that I truly have a huge place in my heart for. I actually think Elder Scrolls might be the better game, but this video is in response to questions that I get when I'm talking to people who haven't played Elder Scrolls yet, or maybe just know a little bit about Too Many Bones. And they'll say, oh, is it just Too Many Bones but Elder Scrolls? Or, oh, I heard it's really similar to Too Many Bones. And I thought this would be an interesting video to make because you can see the shared DNA from this game to this one, but you also can see huge improvements, differences, and I think signs of real growth from Chip Theory between the two games. So I thought it might be fun to talk about a couple of places where the games really differ and you can see some of the Too Many Bones ideas developing into something that's a little bit more flexible in Elder Scrolls. And so that's what this video is about. So the overall structures of the games are also different, and I'm going to get there, but I wanted to just get to the heart of the matter and talk about the biggest set of differences, which is in the characters and the character development. So this is Pickett. He's one of the Gearlocs from Too Many Bones. He's in the base box. He's a classic. And this is a Khajiit that I've started to throw together. Obviously, a Khajiit archer is a classic Elder Scrolls combination, so I thought that would be a fun one to show on camera. So to me, even though I absolutely love the Gearlocs, I loved kind of cracking a code of playing with them, figuring out how all their dice work. They're wonderful. I think that there is an improvement from this game to this one, specifically because these characters are more flexible. You are able to build them in a manner of your choosing. So if you do not want to be a classic Khajiit archer, you could just do something else. And you learn the skills with these characters as you go along, and you can choose things that work for you instead of having to work within the limitations of a specific Gearloc. So let me explain a little bit more about that. So here we've got Pickett, his difficulty levels for co-op and solo, the icons for his dice, and then you have all of the little skill lines that you can develop for Pickett specifically and for no other Gearloc in Too Many Bones. And that's also true for his backup plan, where when you roll bones in Too Many Bones and the dice don't give you a result, you can stack up those bones and get something cool with that. But Pickett has a really specific set of build strats and skills that you have to play into in order to know how to do well as Pickett. And so when you take the reference sheet away, obviously we have Pickett's chip, super nice. Here are dice that are used to adjust Pickett's stats, so he has some base stats, and then you use dice to show increases in those stats as you go. And then here are Pickett's dice. As you train them, they slot into the little skill lines that are represented visually on his mat. And so when you are playing as Pickett, you have chosen already sort of a, not quite a character class, but a vibe of character that you want to be. And there's a set number of skills for you to choose from that are specific to Pickett. What makes Elder Scrolls really different is that everybody gets this same character mat, and then everything else is determined by choices that you make as the player. So for example, if I want to be a Khajiit, that's going to determine my starting stats. So you get a couple of different chips to choose from, so you can decide what you want to look like as a Khajiit. So this is some excellent flowing hair, but I'm going with the cool hooded archer, like Robin Hood Khajiit, because obviously that's awesome. But I know that I have 4 health, that I have 3 stamina, that I have 2 magicka, I've got some combat dice, and I need to get the peg out, but I would know my cooldown stat, which actually we'll talk about in a different part of this video. But what's important here is that whereas Pickett's mat has specific spots for everything, I actually have a lot of choice in terms of how I'm setting up a character for Elder Scrolls. So basically I have room for some more skill lines. I could untrain magic if I decide it doesn't matter. But what's really important here is that I can't just build one skill across an entire row if I want room for another one. So here I've made some choices about, well, I don't think I'm going to upgrade my health that much. So I just kind of popped Magicka over here, thinking that I would push up over time. I gave myself a lot of room for stamina because archery is a stamina-based skill, and this stat is going to determine, sort of like dexterity over here, how far I can move and how many dice I can roll. Combat's just a classic, so I made, a row for it. I'll probably put something else over here. And then I'm giving myself a lot of room to upgrade my archery dice because I decided that would be probably smart. So instead of one reference sheet that's for just a specific kind of character, this game will have like little, so I know what the combat dice do because I have a sheet that's telling me that. And then there's an adventure turn reference in the back because everybody has combat. And then for the bow, I know what my dice are going to do because as I level them up, I'm learning about those dice and choosing to upgrade into specific dice choices and their skills. And as I get other skills, I might have a couple of other reference sheets to help me track exactly what it is I have got going on my mat. So what I like about this is that this has a lot of the fun aspects of Too Many Bones. You got the chunky dice, you upgrade, you get more dice to roll. The different sides do different cool things. And there are actually some mechanical similarities as well. So the active dice here, there are active slots up at the top of this mat. So that concept made it from Too Many Bones into Elder Scrolls. And in a way, the idea of the backup plan made it as well. But what happens is that instead of having to put dice here for your backup plan, you're tracking tenacity the dice results give you. And then you can spend that tenacity on special class abilities. So if I'm an archer, there are going to be things that I can spend my tenacity on that are cool when I get die results that are maybe less desirable in the moment. That doesn't mean that they just end up being nothing. And I think that was like a good idea from Too Many Bones that made it over into Elder Scrolls. But for me, the customization is really, really great. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that in Too Many Bones, you have characters, they're either melee or ranged typically, so like Picket's a melee character. In Elder Scrolls, you are able to just switch battle stances, so you can get different skills that work in different stances, and you can kind of switch from one thing to the other. And so I think that what you're seeing is an evolution in design, where this is really cool, and I still love it, and this game isn't going anywhere, even though it takes up a lot of space in my apartment. But this one gives you some of the same ideas, but with a lot more flex and a lot more customization. Also, while I know that some things are the same, others have changed. So in Too Many Bones, some of your dice become exhausted. In Elder Scrolls, this changes a bit. So let's go ahead and put some pegs in. Let's just say I don't have any tenacity right now. We'll get there. Need to get some experience up here. And then my cooldown, I know from my character sheet, is 2. And so this is actually a really important aspect of the game. So if I'm going to be, out in the middle of a battle and I'm rolling dice, the dice that I roll go down to this cooldown row. And as my cooldown row rotates, I know I'm going to get 2 dice back to keep working with. So things of mine kind of get out of circulation, but I also know about how quickly they're going to come into circulation. Whereas in Too Many Bones, things are just exhausted or not, and there's a little bit less of a flow. In Elder Scrolls, things do get drained, so there are dice that just leave combat until the next battle. But typically they're going to come down to this row. And actually, I think this cooldown row is one of the most interesting things about Elder Scrolls as a game, because I think it does a really good job of keeping dice in circulation, and they play with it in really, really interesting ways. So depending on what else is happening to you, there are a couple kinds of fatigue dice. So these are light fatigue, and these are called over fatigue, and they are really bad because they're super hard to get rid of. All right, so let's say that I've already got some fatigue in this row, and then I'm gonna roll my dice. I'm gonna, do some battling with them. Then they come down here into my cooldown. I know that I'm not going to get these back right away because my cooldown stat's only 2, so these will come up. I'll have to go a turn without these dice, and then I will get them back. And they can go back in the row. But what makes this even more interesting is that not only does fatigue become a really important strategic concept, there are things that will require you to take fatigue. There will be, side quests and choices that you make that add fatigue to your row, and it's going to have consequences when you go to battle later. This is also where status effects are handled. So in Too Many Bones, you just kind of stuck status effect dice on everybody and had to watch all the chips. In the Elder Scrolls, you still do have to put status effects on enemy chips, but for you, you're putting the status effect into your cooldown row, and the effect ends when it comes out of cooldown. So it also means that as you're investing experience into your cooldown track, you're going to get rid of negative status effects more quickly. And so it makes that cooldown track really compelling, because it's not just how many dice do I get back, but also how long do I have to stay under a pall? Like how quickly can I get rid of fatigue? And those strategic considerations have a lot of importance throughout a quest. So I hope this gives you kind of a good starting sense of what makes the Elder Scrolls really special and what makes it a worthy and interesting successor to Too Many Bones. These have components that look similar, but this is really not the same game that you're playing. For Too Many Bones, again, to sum it up, you are learning how to play a specific Gearloc who has specific upgrades and will always be played in a specific number of ways. Whereas in Elder Scrolls, you're using some of the same concepts, but you are building your own character, and you are choosing their class, and you are choosing their skills, and you are choosing how deeply they can delve into any of their skills by setting up these rows in ways that are optimal for you, and you'll learn that over the course of a bunch of plays. And while there are some similar concepts, like active dice, things like this cooldown row really add a level of strategy to what you're upgrading, how you are playing your dice instead of just exhausting them or not, and then just a number of other considerations that become more obvious through play. So those are some of the essential differences between a Gearloc and an Elder Scrolls character from two different chip theory games. All right, so as you might see, I've switched out the components on the table. This is all Elder Scrolls stuff, and this is the only Too Many Bones stuff that's here. So the other thing you should know about Elder Scrolls is there's some major structural differences between it and Too Many Bones that also make it an utterly different game. So in Too Many Bones, the idea was to go through a certain number of encounters and then get to a tyrant at the end of your path. And each path towards a tyrant is a different length because of difficulty and, just sort of shortness of game reasons. But you're always on the same map, and it's kind of just a matter of how far you go. And you'll draw cards that have encounters on them that sometimes offer you interesting choices, and they're cute and they're fun, but they don't necessarily form a coherent story. It's more you leave, there's a tyrant at the end, and then stuff happens in between during which you're upgrading your characters and trying to get them to a state where they're ready to battle a tyrant. In Elder Scrolls, what you're doing is a full-on quest line. So there are side quests that actually look kind of like stuff from Too Many Bones, but then there's also this much larger story quest for which my friends Ryan and Salem were primarily the writers. They did a really good job of making these quests weave together, making different parts of the map matter. If you visit different cities, there's going to be different things that happen in those cities. There's different sorts of encounters out here, but you are moving as a party on maps of different provinces in Tamriel. So here's the Cyrodiil map. We got High Rock, Morrowind, and of course, where most people start, Black March. So each of these places has different special abilities for enemies that are native to the area, and they also have different complexities. So High Rock is a place where there's a lot of unrest, and it's going to impact you during your quest. Black Marsh is known for its terrible weather, so there's a weather gauge that impacts how far you can travel and other aspects of the quest as you go. Also, instead of just cards to guide you, you're going to have a full-on gazetteer that tells you about the cities that you visit, and that contains information about the quests that you might do. So in terms of storyline, Elder Scrolls is much, much more bulked out. When you do a campaign, especially if you do several campaigns, in a way I think is more meaningful because you are learning little bits about the world of the game and its lore as you go. And I'll be running an interview actually with Ryan about how he got up on Elder Scrolls lore and was writing with that in mind for this game. So in terms of both spatial movement and scope of story, you're looking at something utterly different in Elder Scrolls than you are in Too Many Bones. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And, sometimes I used to think that Too Many Bones is a table hog, and then I played Elder Scrolls. This one's a big table hog, but I think that that's okay. The games are trying to do something different. They are really just not the same thing in this particular regard. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of differences is, I guess, the ambition and scope of battles between Too Many Bones and Elder Scrolls. So this is the battle mat for Too Many Bones. And, you know, you have an initiative meter, and you have spaces for melee and ranged fighters to start, ways for enemies to come on the board. But this is like a knife fight in a phone booth battle mat, and all the battles take place on this mat. Of course, with Undertow, you get some water stuff too, which is very cool. And yeah, basically I highly recommend you just kind of keep going through the expansions, because there's some exciting things that they do with this mat throughout the life of Too Many Bones. But essentially, you've got a pretty small space, and it's a little bit abstract in terms of how you move around and do fighting. Whereas with Elder Scrolls, there are actually multiple types of battles that you can do. The one that you're going to see most often is a clash. So you do a clash mat, and you have an entry tile for that mat, where you're going to kind of stage entry into battle. But as you can see, this is a much larger space to work in, and there's a lot more tactical decision making to do, especially because your stamina lets you move more, and there's further to go. If you're playing with a large party and you end up drawing a lot of enemies, it's still going to feel tight, but there's just a lot more fancy footwork that you can do when this is the scope of your battle. There are also fun treasures and stuff that pop up that you can unlock, and that's kind of inspired by the loot from Too Many Bones, which also has some lockpicking. But it gets a more full-throated treatment, I think, in Elder Scrolls. The other thing is that this is only one kind of battle. There are also battles called delves that have you taking these other tiles and arranging them depending on delve cards that you draw. So every delve could be a bit different, and some of the rooms in those delves are different sizes. And these symbols in combination with the delve cards will help you figure out where enemies pop up, where you get loot or treasure, and where sky shards appear, which are an important part of delving in Elder Scrolls. And then for the last bit of every campaign in Elder Scrolls, there will be a dungeon, and it'll instruct you to use all of the battle stuff that you knew about before in creative ways that are specific to that dungeon. So rather than just always go back to the battle mat every time, Elder Scrolls has a broader expressive range for the kinds of battles that you can fight and the kinds of tactical decisions they can push you into, just because there are more ways and more combinations for fighting, both in terms of what characters are able to do and in terms of how this staging for battle ends up looking. So I'm going to cut the video here, but hopefully it was interesting. I guess I just wanted to have a chat about how Chip Theory took one game that I thought was really great and then turned it into another game that I think actually might be better, and some of the evolutions and creative decisions that went into that. I personally was really happy to hear echoes of Too Many Bones in Elder Scrolls, but in ways that often surprised and delighted me. So tune back in throughout the month of July and into early August. I'm going to be doing more Elder Scrolls videos. And the reason I'm doing this actually is this is a kind of a pilot thing for me. I wanted to play games more deeply and enjoy my games more instead of just rush from game to game. I'm having a harder time like keeping up with YouTube because I'm doing so much design work myself right now. And so this is my first game of the month. And I'm just going to kind of play it for roughly a month, talk about it, do a few videos about it, and then I'll talk at the end of the month about how I feel about the game, having spent so much time with it. And then I will pick another one. And if this is something that interests you, let me know. And if you have some thoughts about what some good games of the month might be, let me know. Although I have a few plans, so it's going to be at least next quarter before I start taking new recommendations. So you know what? I want to play games slowly, and I want to enjoy them more deeply. And so this is part of that process. So if you want to join me for that, stay tuned. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.